Recording in progress. Hi, Marnie. So happy to be doing this and just stating out loud that we are recording, and I have your consent to do that and to share this. Thank you for being willing to do that. And the fact that we're using this as a teaching session, it shouldn't really make much of a difference. We've done these kinds of Zoom sessions before, and I might just, as I'm doing things, I might just sort of call out so anyone watching this in the future kind of understands why I'm doing what I'm doing. But for your experience, hopefully it shouldn't impact your experience very much. Any questions? No. Marnie we've been down this road together before, so she knows what she's in for. And I'm really excited because, as usual, before the session even begins, stuff is already coming up. I always take a little time before a session begins to just like light some incense, ground myself and sort of drop into what we're about to do, and just invite, like any feedback, all the angels and guides to like gather around the table and start talking. And of course, I'm always pulling essential oils into this. And so it was really interesting when I went to pull an oil for myself. What came up for me was doTERRA's adaptive blend, which I don't know if we've talked about this one before, but it's a wonderful, wonderful blend used for to support the nervous system. But it specifically has adaptogens, which are, like herbs and plants and herbs that help to really like regulate the nervous system and have a deeply like calming effect. And they're great particularly for really that like amygdala fight or flight, disrupting that response, and lowering cortisol levels and things like that. So really just like regulating the nervous system and helping the body to adapt to high stress and trauma. So
how does that differ from the balance blend?
I would say this is a little more like intensive. So balance blend is wonderful. If anyone is not familiar with the balance blend, it's a blend of some florals and tree oils. Florals are great for heart. Tree oils are great for root chakra. The florals are very sort of spiritual. The tree oils are very sort of grounding. So balance blend kind of like gets you from both sides, and physiologically has a really calming and regulating effect on the nervous system. So that's a great one for just sort of like throughout the day. Whereas this one, the adaptive blend and adaptogens in general are much more targeted to that sort of deeper stress response, trauma response, fight or flight, real like it's just a sort of next level emotional regulation, if that makes any sense. And it's interesting because what came up, I know you don't have this, so I'm sort of using it for both of us, and as I'm like using it on myself, you will also get the benefits. And so as I'm doing that, what's interesting is that, okay, so the purpose physiologically for this, it's everything that I just stated, and that amazing, like lowering cortisol levels and having that amazing like regulatory benefit. But for you personally, I just like the word, this is called, the blend is called adaptive, and just like the idea of like adaptogens in general. I was like, oh, that word, like adapting, because you are in the middle of this like transition. Marnie just moved from Los Angeles to Connecticut, and a more like rural experience, and also your home, you're returning to your childhood home. And so this idea of adapting and getting support in like adapting to this, not only just major life transition, but confronting a lot of like childhood stuff and going back. I know we've talked about sort of returning to like the belly of the beast. And so getting a lot of like spiritual support in adapting to that as well, in addition to the physiological support. I think is really interesting. And also, as I was choosing music, because I always like to play music, there might be points during this healing where I ask you just to close your eyes and just sit meditatively while I do something. And so I like to have the option of that music for you. But even just choosing the music was so interesting, because I was just going through Spotify playlists and was like, which one are we supposed to use? And so this is a playlist that's called Peace. But what I really wanted, it was just lullabies. It was so interesting that your body was give me all the lullabies. And so I was trying to find something that was kind of lullaby-esque, which was really sweet. And it just, what came to me was this sort of energy of you literally are being brought home, but it was very, very infantile, like a baby coming home for the first time, and which I know is very loaded for you because you were adopted, and so that sort of that homecoming, it's almost this is a little bit of a do-over, you're that little infantile Marnie is gonna get a homecoming do-over and just being brought home to the home that is safe and loving and nurturing and creative and joyful and peaceful, stable home, all the things that little teeny tiny infant Marnie deserves then and deserves now. And that sort of playing into this idea of adapting on a very, very infantile level. This is that's your first experience of the world, when you are literally birthed and then brought into this place that you are now going to be that is your new womb away from womb. And so I guess just all of the adaptation, I think I just reminding me of that agility that is sort of demanded of us when we're born, that all of a sudden it's okay, immediately adapt to this new way of being, and it's actually quite traumatic, and doubly so when you're adopted. So yeah, all of that, just that's a
so to clarify for those who are listening, I was adopted, and then in 2009, after searching for many years for my birth mother, I found her and that side of my family. So in a way, I'm becoming a daughter later in life, and I'm having a type of rebirth, and that on a subconscious level brought me home. It wasn't as if I thought, okay, I found my family, therefore I am moving from Los Angeles to Connecticut. It was sort of humming in the background. But I had a lot of family trauma here with my adoptive family, and I was very nervous about what my body's response was going to be in these spaces. And I was young, at the time. So, I don't know if there's specific roads and areas that I should avoid. And the experience has been very different than what I imagined. I feel held in this space. So while it is very, very much a transitional period, and it comes with its innate challenges. When we make a major life change. It's also, that's one of the reasons why I seek this kind of care, because I'm aware of the fact that that my body on a physical level and psychological level and spiritual level is being affected, and the thoughts about this change, and I want to know, I want to be present in that, and just be very present in this moment of changing, and sort of take actions around what I should be listening to, the voices I should be listening
to. Yeah, and I mean, everything that's coming up, right now just feels it's just affirming so much of what we have talked about previously, which is that this move, obviously the place that you're in now, like it's so connected to childhood trauma, and then you sort of did the self-care thing and like got yourself out of that, worked your way to the other side of the country, and now as an adult coming back, and that we've talked about the meaning behind this and how it feels like you're getting an opportunity to kind of go back and do some repair in this space, and so it's interesting because I know Marnie does a lot of inner child work, and so we've also talked about like the sort of ushering your inner child through this and what feelings are coming up for like that wounded child. But it's interesting to me because I know you're like very connected to that part of yourself, and this and what's coming up now is like we're going back even further, like it's very distinctly like that moment of birth, and like that very early, those early months, like that very like infantile experience, which is just so sweet because it really is like going back to the origin, which is what we always hope for in this work, and what we expect from this work is like we're going to get to the root of these belief systems and discomfort, and so it just makes a lot of sense that for where you're at right now, that like sort of infant piece would be coming up, especially as you are spending more time with your birth family and having a new experience of them. So there is something, this is like a homecoming in so many ways, but it's interesting. I never even thought of that piece of like, oh yeah, literally coming home for the first time as an infant, like the homecoming of all homecomings, like your very, very first experience of home. So that's really interesting to me. And just, I guess also this idea of like, I just keep seeing you like this little infant self, like really tightly swaddled, like sleeping, but like this idea of there's something so special and terrifying, but hopefully mostly special, about being an infant and just like you can't do anything, you are so reliant. I mean, just not even having like motor skills, just totally swaddled, and you're just this little sleeping lump. And the idea that like that's how this phase gets to be for you, that you get to be not just a child but like an infant, feels very specific and important. That you are not responsible for anything except to just exist and be loved and taken care of. Which feels like a relief. It just feels like, even just saying that out loud just feels like, oh my God. Like, I feel like I just, it was like this huge weight lifted, like, from the heart, especially. I can like feel it in my back and my shoulders. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, do you, I mean, I can share a little bit about,
Yeah.
I've done EMDR therapy around my first memories, and I have a memory of um, this lullaby, um, this wooden lullaby that hung above my crib, and uh, I was living with I was brought home with my adoptive parents, and it was a home of dysfunction and abuse. And my grandmother told me that she wasn't allowed to rock me, and that I was left in my crib crying. And when I did the EMDR therapy, I was having an intense uh, reaction to music at night, or music that I couldn't control. And I used to work in the music industry, so I'm not sure how I navigated that time or space, but that I had extreme panic attacks from music that I couldn't stop. And when I did EMDR therapy, what came up, what I saw was my adoptive mother walking in and pulling that music box. That there was like a string and a bead, a wooden bead at the end. I can see exactly what the image looks like. It was a baby in a rocker on the it's round, and so that's what he did. To soothe me in some way. And she didn't want me to be held or rocked and get used to that type of care that she herself couldn't provide. So I think there was an intense fear around being that little ball, of and not having any, not being able to do anything for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing this same song over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so, but this music to me, like when you said lullaby, I was like, whoa, it feels very, very calming to me. And just last night I was speaking to my aunts, and I said I kind of feel like a kid again, and they said, well, you are like you are like the baby of the family. So
I love that. And also, I'm so glad. I mean, again, it's really fun when these, it's always fun to have like my experience and then hear, how it, how we're having like, just how we're attuned to each other, how, you talking about like that lullaby music and how triggering that, could be. And I don't usually have such strong feelings about playlists. I usually, I have a number of meditative playlists that I use, and I usually just pick one. But it was coming in so strong that like it had to be lullaby music. And so I love that. It like, it like makes me emotional, because it feels like there's a real, like we are really tapping into that and giving, like healing that piece. And also just what just that grief of like, lullabies are literally crafted to soothe. They're very specific in the way that they are, just in the way that they're created, and the rhythm of them and the notes that are used, like they're very deliberately created to be healing and calming and soothing for infants. And like, so the idea that, it's like lullabies were used against you, which is like so, just feels very like heavy. But I wonder, can you close your eyes and just put like one hand over your heart and one hand over your stomach? And we're just gonna like breathe that out for a minute. If you could just take like a few deep breaths. I'm just gonna do some tapping. And as you're taking breaths, just making sure you're engaging your diaphragm. Really getting very full breaths. As I'm tapping, you can't see, but anyone watching sees me tapping different parts of the brain, and this is just using like the electromagnetic currents from the hands. Our hands are very powerful in that way. And this is literally just engaging the different lobes of the brain, hemispheres of the brain. Just sort of recalibrate as we are clearing and integrating new ways of being. This is what we do to just kind of like get the brain and the heart and the body, building cohesion there and getting everybody on the same page as we are tossing out the old and stepping into the new. Okay. So there's that. And then also, as you were talking about, she wasn't allowed to rock you. That was a good reminder for me, because there's also like a cranial-sacral piece to this, which anyone who's familiar with cranial-sacral therapy, there is like the sacrum, like this bone sort of at the bottom of our spine, sort of like connecting like hips and spine. And then we have the like cranial bones up here. It's basically top of the spine and bottom of the spine. And those two sort of work together. There is like a rocking motion to them. Like they work together and they kind of, they rock and they rock the spine, and they have a lot to do with how like cerebral spinal fluid is flowing. And again, the bottom line for all of this is just like the nervous system being regulated and emotional regulation. And also, again, it's like no surprise that as infants at any age really, that we find rocking to be very soothing, because it's mimicking the natural rhythms in our body and the rocking in our body. But of course, trauma can like throw that rhythm out of whack. And then so we are sort of forever in this deregulated state, like this sort of low grade dysregulation, because that rhythm is kind of out of whack. So cranial-sacral therapy is very powerful for like getting that back on track and sort of being able to drop back into a nice like easy alignment and regulated state again. And so you can go and get that done physically, get a cranial-sacral, support and adjustment, but we can also do it energetically. So bringing that in as well, but it feels like there's a piece before we do that. And so I just, it's so interesting. I just have to smile because I just was not expecting that for today. Not expecting all this like infant stuff. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I'm just going to look something up for a moment. There are also bones in the brain, which relate as well, and they sort of rock in the brain. There's like a rhythm to them. They sort of open and close and rock. And again, like when they are sort of out of sync, that can have a regulatory effect. And let me see, I just want to look this up and make sure that I'm not missing anything. Oh, I have it even. I have this section marked in my book. It's a good one. It's a powerful one. It comes up a lot with trauma stuff. Okay. SB junction. It's funny, I just kind of like to read. I know this is all very sort of science-y, which again is kind of surprising. I wasn't expecting all of that, but it's wonderful because I also know that it's been on your mind, wanting to, just like emotional regulation has like been on your mind. And so it feels like this is really an answer to that. Getting to do a lot of these like physiological interventions, which is not what I was expecting today, but it was great. Let's do it. Okay, I know that I want to do this, but I always like to scan the language to see if anything is jumping out, because sometimes it's kind of fun to see if there's anything in particular that we should be paying attention to. That's interesting. There's a piece here on birth and how these bones in the brain, this like what we call the SB junction cranial bones, that there can be like disruption at birth. Feels like maybe that's true here. Oh, this is very interesting. So it's saying here that this can have serious repercussions for a child growing up, and that a child will always, it says that we often see children become like thumb suckers, because actually like that palate in the mouth, like that like sort of connects to the brain. Like if you were to stick a finger in your mouth and sort of touch the top of your mouth back in the center of the top of your mouth, that you would essentially be like connecting, like that's kind of where those bones are oriented, like in the middle of your brain. Anyway, the whole point is that they find that children will do that as sort of they subconsciously know that like that is then soothing that part of the brain. And so in reading that, what came up for me is just like coping mechanisms that you have acquired to sort of compensate for that, which is really interesting. So it feels like in balancing this and addressing this, that it will also, like a lot of those sort of coping mechanisms will get to fall away. They just won't be necessary anymore, which is kind of awesome. Okay, so yeah, all right, so you could just close your eyes, and actually there's a connection here. There's like a heart chakra connection here, where there's something about that the cranial-sacral piece coming back into balance, and then these cranial bones coming back into balance. Everything's able to like rock the way it's designed to, and so it's almost like we're like installing like a rocker in you. So little infant Marnie is just gonna be like perpetually rocked as she moves through the world, which is so lovely. Okay, so let me just write this down. For anyone watching, I often make notes. It helps me to write these things down and sort of see them as a map. A lot of these things, so much comes up for me. I get like quick fire messages, and so when I write them all down, it helps me to kind of like organize the information. So let's see. Oh, I love the idea that you're just gonna have like a little rocker living in your body. Do you have an image of a rocker? Is there like I love rockers. Yeah. It's funny. I have a very like specific image of one in my head. I wonder what it looks like for you.
Yes, it's a rocker in the woods made of tree limbs.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That the woods, that you're like, your home is in the woods. You're like your nursery. You know how you would have like a rocker in a nursery? That like your nursery is the woods. I love that. Okay, and then large. All right, and then all of this actually. Yeah, that hurt piece feels really good. So there's also like a consciousness and like belief system piece to all of this too. And it's this consciousness of separation. Sorry, I'm just trying to, just asking, asking what it wants to do. Because there are a couple different ways we can go with this. And does it want to, what is the goal here? Okay, heart. So I'm connecting this to the, this is specifically a issue. So it's this consciousness of separation. And so, yeah, there's like sort of packaged in all of this is also this like added benefit of like belonging and what's the best word for it? Something more than belonging. It is being held. It is yeah, it's being held, but it's like this sense of like these mother's arms, which is interesting because I know in our last session so much maternal stuff came up as well. So it's almost like we're installing like this rocker, this perpetual rocker, and these mother's arms, and sorry, I'm turning off because this is very annoying. Anyway, whatever. It's like this like perpetual rocker in you that is like rocking you and soothing you. Apparently we're installing like lullaby music and a new experience of lullabies. And then it's like I don't even see a person attached. It's literally just arms, like mother's arms, like this little swaddled baby, very, very tightly swaddled baby in like these mother's arms in this like rocker. So, which is interesting because it's just like layers of being held. So like that very tight swaddling, which we know in babies, you know, we do that on purpose, like to instill like a sense of safety. So it's like that tight swaddle, and then these arms that like never let you go, just like perpetual maternal arms holding you, and then like in this, all of that like seated in this rocker, this eternal rocker, and the whole everything about it is just like so like just so sweet, just so just that sort of idyllic, that like idyllic infant experience of just like, I just get to be held and just be completely bathed, submerged in unconditional love. And so this all kind of goes back to this idea of separation, and sort of this this like pathological separation that has been present, and sort of restoring you to this truth of like, no, you get to be like this little infant baby who is just perpetually held and is responsible for nothing. You couldn't be, even if you wanted to, you're a little baby that can't do anything. So your only responsibility is to be held and loved. Like, responsibility is even the wrong word. Like, you just get to be held and loved, and you get to just be safe and just enjoy that safety. You know how it's like the most beautiful thing when you watch an infant sleep and they have like that little teeny tiny smile on their lips? It's like the most crushing, beautiful thing ever. Like, that's what I'm seeing. Just this like crushingly sweet image of you being completely held unconditionally, unwaveringly, forever and always. Little teeny tiny Marnie, and just the relief of that, and the safety, the like deep spiritual experience of safety that comes with that. And so sweet. Okay, I love that you had that image of the rocker, the rocker in the woods, the tree limbs. I'm going to take a moment. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you are experiencing this, but there are messages coming in and I need to turn them off, and I don't entirely know how, but let's see. I'm just going to do that, and I think it will work. It's like I can see there are just so many specifics, like even the like blanket that you're swaddled in is like one of those like 70s, like, you know, like those very, very light those like baby blankets, like they're almost like felt or something. You know how they're like very thin, maybe felt is the wrong word, but you know, they're like really thin and soft. And you like get one at the hospital, but you can also buy them too. And it's like, it's wrapped around you, and it's like gray, but it has like little like clowns and like elephants on it. I don't know. It's like really cute. I don't know what the clowns and the elephants are about, but it's just like super sweet, and you're like wrapped in it. I don't know if there's anything that's important about that, but
sure about the clowns or the elephants part, but I mean, you know, but I mean, a couple of things have come up for me, and first of all, I wasn't sure if I should share this, like when I should share this, but you know what my grandmother told me when I was really too young to fully understand like the depth of this type of trauma, but she said, you know, I want you to know that when I visit the house, your mom will not let me rock you, and no one is allowed to rock you, and this has never left me. She's my grandma Beth said, she would say to everyone, don't rock the baby. And so another image that came up for me was not just being held, like the absence of being held as an infant, but also then, you know, as an adult, allowing other people to hold me. That came up for me, and sort of, you know, trying to like, how do you create a cradle for yourself? It's pretty, you know, I can't really envision that, but I can so easily see someone else holding me, you know, hug, an embrace, words, and just like seeing like me create, I don't know, but also the part of the homecoming too. My home feels like I mean, I wouldn't say like cradle, but it feels it's just a very safe space. And actually, as I was walking this morning, I said aloud, I said, I'm giving gratitude for the safety of this space.
I love that this new home feels distinctly safe, because that does feel like, as we're doing all of this, like calling in this like homecoming, that feels like the most important piece of this is that this is the true ideal homecoming. Like, this little baby self is coming home to a safe and nurturing space, to like the ideal space that you would want to bring a baby home to. And you know, a space that not only is like, you know, physically, mentally safe, not even just safe in this moment, but it's a safe space that allows for good development. And you know, there's also sort of that future projection of it too, where it's like it's a space that is conducive to growth and expansion. So that it feels like there's that part of it too, where it's like the first phase is like getting the baby home and feeling safe and feeling loved and getting its needs met. And then all the possibility that flows from that safety being established, that like when we're anchored in that, I mean, then we're just limitless. Like, now it just feels like this whole healing and balancing and cleansing will lead to like doors and windows flying open, like just opportunity, possibility, expansion, like ascension, like just so much, especially like creative and self-expression, I guess. It's going to be, yeah, I guess it's like this core sense of safety then ultimately makes real big, authentic, bold expression of yourself possible, which is interesting because this piece about like this consciousness of separation, one of the consequences of that is just feeling like I can't really be myself. So yeah, it feels like that is being restored as well. So just like a new experience of yourself will be possible, which is exciting. And then there was something else that you said. Oh, grandmother. I mean, as soon as you said your grandmother, which it's funny because you mentioned her before and it's only just now like connecting, but it's like, oh, those arms that I was talking about, where it's like, we are installing these like weird floating female arms. It was just like, oh, grandmother. That's like a 1,000,000,000% grandmother's arms, which is interesting because I just was like, oh, mother's arms, you know. But no, it feels like that is specifically grandmother's arms. So grandma gets the last laugh because she's gonna rock you all she wants, like for eternity. And but also just the, oh, go ahead.
Like for me, like with that, like it's not only that like my grandmother gets to hold me in the way that she wasn't able to, you know, in this life, but also that like I'm being held in truth, because I was so young for her to share that information with me. But I remembered it, and I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't fully process it, but I understood it enough to know that, that my home was different than other children's homes. And also, as I began to understand more, her words, validated my experience. So it's meaningful. And I just always had a very, very special place for my grandma. And just, she was just very authentically, herself, and just like she was a truth teller.
I love that. What's her name?
Bess.
Grandma Bess. What did you call her?
My stepmother's mother was grandma. Her name was Anne. So it was Grandma A and Grandma B.
Oh,
that's
really cute. Grandma B. I love that you said she's like the truth teller, because it does feel like, so these are very specifically like grandmother's arms, and there's this it's like, okay, well, what are the different qualities? Like, what would make a grandmother's arms different from a mother's arms? And it feels like there's specifically this quality of like wisdom, and yeah, there's like this communication aspect of it. And so it's almost like, so little infant Marnie is like being held, but it's like, as you're being held, it's like she's whispering all this like wisdom and information and guidance. And so she is like very, very much present and active and wanting to be like a spiritual guide for you. And just the relief of that too, as you walk through life and have a lot of questions or, confusion, indecision, whatever it may be, that she is like right there. You don't have to go anywhere for any answers. She's like right there, and she'll just kind of like, she'll whisper them in your ear while she's rocking you. And yeah, so there is that piece too, this like sort of spiritual guide piece of it, which would be fun to explore if there's anything. I know we've talked before about you having like an altar, and just little like, anything that you want to like add to the altar. If there's any, I don't know if you have like a picture of you with her, or just a picture of her, or anything that is like tied to her. It seems like maybe some sort of token in your house, or even just an image would be nice to have.
Yes.
You do?
I have. I remember when she passed, my dad and I were walking through her house, and I like immediately went to her jewelry box. My dad's like, hold on a second, and at that point I was in college, and I was collecting vintage jewelry. So I knew like what was her, like what was real, like which was like real stones. I was just looking for like the vintage pieces. But he allowed me to have two of her sweaters. They're these old cardigans, and one I lost in New Orleans, but the other one I still have, and it's traveled with me since then, in a couple of decades. And I was just thinking, I got something in the mail. It's like this company that frames artifacts. And I was thinking of getting it framed for my house because I just thought it's just too precious. Like I used to wear it, like, you know, like in the 90s, but I was like, it's just too precious to be sitting in my closet. So I've been thinking of, framing it.
That's amazing. Yes, that's amazing. I mean, I'm feeling like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but as you are, I know you are like newly setting up your home and you're making decisions about how you want to use all these spaces. And it feels like you, like there is this longing for like a nursery in your home, which maybe is not like a good use of space. But if there's a way to bring, I don't know, a way to bring like the spirit of like a nursery into, maybe, I don't know if it's the guest room or like it doesn't feel like appropriate for an office space because that's more like workspace. But I guess just like your bedroom, but I don't know, like the guest room keeps coming up for me, like a separate space where you can just go and be and kind of connect with all of that and have like that sort of nursery energy. Is interesting. But I also know you don't have a lot of space to work with, so maybe just framing her sweater is enough, and we'll bring that energy to it. But
well, I mean, it does make sense to me in the respect that that's the one room. I mean, I've been here for I think 6 weeks now, or I'm getting close to 2 months. And the first room that kind of came together, I mean, it's not done yet completely, but it was the guest room. And, you know, I've shared with you, I thought like maybe it would be a yoga studio, maybe it would be this, you know, maybe it would be my office. And then I just walked in one day and I just heard this voice that just said, let it be a room, and not let it be, you know, a bedroom. That's what it's supposed to be. And I also knew that was welcoming in other people, like inviting family over. I wanted them to feel very comfortable. And you know, I've been looking up like what are those like special things that you should have in a guest room so that people feel comfortable. And so I feel like there's like kind of like bits of like a nursery. I'm sure like if I looked at like Pinterest and like I'm sure there's pieces of it that could be adapted, that are, you know, for adults, you know, because there's all these like sort of like creature, you know, comforts that I've been thinking of to have.
yes, I love that. And it's almost like, you know, usually when I talk to clients, I mean, a lot of times this idea of like a sacred space will come up all the time because it's just such a great, it's just great to have like a designated, you know, space for healing. But we usually talk about them as kind of a sort of classic, like, you know, meditation space, like a just sort of a nurturing, quiet space for journaling and things like that. But for you, it feels like a nursery, like creating a room, I guess, and just sort of having fun with like, what are some things that speak to like the child within you? I don't know if it's like a stuffed animal on the bed or something like that. And like, maybe like, don't even be afraid to have those sort of childlike elements in there. I imagine anyone who's staying in that room will find it charming, you know, like it won't be weird. But anything that you can bring in, and like a rocker in that space, or if you were to I know you have your amazing yard, a rocker outside, if you feel more inclined to that. But it seems like it would be, it's by no means necessary. I don't I don't want anyone to think that they do a session with me and then they have to go out and buy furniture. But if you feel inclined to have a rocker, I mean, we are energetically installing that, so it is not necessary to purchase anything, but it does feel like, oh, that would be a very meaningful addition somewhere, sometime, in your home. But yeah, I can imagine like that little piece of her framed in that space. And it almost feels like, you know, whereas some people might go to their yoga space or their little meditation space or whatever, or even sit outside in your like glorious yard, feels very specifically for you like it would be a good practice to be in that room, even if it's like 10 minutes a day, and just sort of sit. I mean, I imagine you just like in the fetal position on the bed, like, which sounds crazy, but it just feels like a very, I don't know, like it would be a good healing practice to just whatever meditation or quiet time you like to do, or journaling, to like be able to do it in that space, and be sort of really like steeped in that like nursery energy. Anyway, just again, I just have to laugh because it's just really fun for me how these things come up and how just specific it is for every person. I've done many sessions and have never recommended that anyone create a nursery in their home. It's so much fun. Intuition is fun. Also, interestingly, as I was talking through all that stuff before, and it feels like it's cleared a little bit, but I want to do one more to make sure we got it all. But so much throat chakra stuff. It was like, oh, as I was talking about the grandma stuff, it was like, could feel like my throat closing up. It just felt like so much pressure. And so it's interesting that you were saying like she's a truth teller, because it feels like that's very closely linked to you not being able to speak your truth. And so like, oh, her like saying the words you weren't allowed to say or something like that, that she's sort of this conduit for like self-expression, and she will be a real ally in like self-expression and releasing anything that you have had to suppress or edit, or anywhere that there's like parts of yourself that it doesn't even have to be verbal, but just parts of yourself that you want to express. This will be like opening a lot of that up. And also that feels specifically, it's interesting, like rose quartz is coming up, which, you know, we always classically think of as supporting the heart, but it's interesting that rose quartz would be coming up for your throat chakra and expression. And I know you have rose quartz, right? So it feels like that would just be a good thing to have around if you want to like keep it by your bed or somewhere visible, and just be like connecting with that. As I'm saying all this, it's like my throat is closing up again. So maybe I'll just have you close your eyes and just place one hand over your heart. It's interesting. My inclination is the left hand, which is maternal. Left is maternal stuff. Right is paternal stuff. So left hand over your throat, and maybe right hand over your heart. And again, just breathing. And taking some deep breaths and really connecting to that exhale, sighing it out. Releasing some of that energy from your throat. Creating space for safe expression, bold expression, authentic expression, childlike expression feels important here. Child self free. And it also feels like there's a little bit of those like infant cries, like suppressed cries. It's just allowing that infant self, mobilizing some of those tears, some of those cries. nervous system as a whole. Releasing some of that. Just grief, but specifically cries for help. Ooh, yeah, just saying help, like, feels really powerful. Calling in assistance. It's like, it's making me like a little, like shaky, like destabilized, which is interesting because it's like that rocking, but that sense of not panic, but just rocking in the sense of being like destabilized and feeling a little unmoored. So coming back to that place of like the easy rocking, soothing rocking. You're safe and held, and there is perpetual assistance. You don't even need to cry for help because help is ever present. Those grandmother's arms holding you. There is no separation between you and perpetual help, unconditional help, loving, loving, loving help. So in this space, it now becomes a space of receiving, safe space to receive, and it's like this channel of just constant receiving, this channel being opened, receiving from these grandmother's arms. And so again, kind of this free to have your feelings and cry for help, but that also this just installing this ever-present help that you can tap into. And so if there are any questions on your heart today, anywhere that you are feeling like you need help, you are wanting help, or even just this sense of like unease and like, I feel like I need help, but I don't even know what I need help with, that sort of sense of confusion or unknowns. Just turning all of that over to these grandmother's arms, which feels like very much your grandmother and her spiritual presence available to you, and then also this sort of larger, higher power, spirit source, like the grandmother's arms to end all. Grandmother's arms, like just that incredible, infinite, eternal, magnificent grandmotherly support, cosmic grandmother. There is no separation between you and that infinite support. As we do inner child work, we talk a lot about like that parent, that unconditionally loving parent that we are looking on and accessing. And it feels like this is being taken a step further, that we're calling in like the really like this lineage of unconditional love, this family tree of unconditional love. We're going back into there's real depth to it here, this like ancestral component. So it's like your grandmother and going back into your ancestry, and just like layers and layers and layers of support, ancestral support holding you. And just so unconditional unconditionally loving, unconditionally available, that feels important to say and acknowledge. There's nothing to be done to access it or try to find it. It's just ever present. Is there anything in particular that's coming up for you around help and somewhere that you're wanting help and guidance? It feels like you don't necessarily need to say it, because of course it all knows on an energetic level, it all knows what you need and knows what's on your heart, but it also feels like that throat chakra piece, that it might be important to just say it out loud and express it and kind of claim it out loud if there's somewhere that you're wanting to ask for help, ask for guidance. Is there anything that comes to you?
Yeah, a few things. So I'm having that pain that I've had before in my left. Actually, now it's both ovaries. First it was my left, now it's my right. So I'm feeling that, and then when you
Can you say that again, because I didn't hear you for a moment?
Oh, I felt a little bit of that pain in my left ovary, and now my right. And then in terms of, and then like all the imagery, like when I was well, there's a lot of things, but when I was holding on to my throat and my back, I kept like letting go, because I felt like I was gripping my throat or my back. And then I opened my eyes and I looked, and I was barely touching either side, but it just felt like so heavy. So that had that experience. And then I just saw all these images of my grandmother, just the details of her kitchen. And she had this step stool that was white. I mean, just like these really minute, like tiny details of her apartment. And then in terms of help, what came up for me, which has come up a lot, is like not fearing the dark, which feels very relevant for this session. So I've always been afraid of the dark, and so needing help around that. The fear of music, that does come up for me every once in a while. I panic. It happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was at a restaurant and they just, like, 6 o'clock, and this band came in, they started playing music, and I just think like my nervous system has just been, everything has been like, is being like touched, and so so all these feelings that are coming up in places that I've worked on, like I'm like there's some trauma, and also just some anxiety that's resurfacing, that I know like will subside. And then I knew, I just how to self-soothe, and then not only be okay in that space, but to actually enjoy the music and not like fear it. And then so there was help with the dark, and that's also related to the nighttime driving, which when I really think about it, before I left, I was afraid of driving at night, like just period, and especially the dark roads, the back windy roads. And I've already made so much progress, and it really has been through my inner child work and acknowledging, my little girl who's scared and having conversations, and then also my teenager. But I feel like I still need more healing around that space. And then in terms of health, I mean, definitely like being a mom for me too.
I was waiting for you to say that. Because I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was just like, I know it's going to come up. When you said that you were having like pain in your ovaries, you were feeling that pain, immediately what came to me was like, it's not pain, it's stimulation. So it was like, just sort of like, they're like waking up a little bit. And this idea, that like ancestral piece came up so strongly just now, when we were doing that, like that cleanse and balance. And so it feels like this like sort of past future. It was like, oh, okay, all of this like ancestral assistance is then gonna sort of usher in, it like makes this, future family and lineage possible, which like, oh, it makes me really emotional that it's like all these amazing women, like all these grandmas are like gonna help you then step into being mother, grandmother, great grandmother, for generations to come. So I'm not surprised that your ovaries were like, whoa, we better join the party. I love that. So for you to say, it's interesting because I wouldn't normally ask, the thing with these balances is that we're doing it. Like there's really no homework beyond this because we're doing it. Like the cleanse is happening, the purge is happening, the balance is happening. And so I as far as like the help and asking for help, again, kind of like I said, like it's not really necessary for you to ask for help. Like energetically, it's all happening, it's all in motion. But it did feel like important to say that loud, and now I know why. Because yes, for you to say like I would like help with being a mom in this journey of like motherhood, and for anyone watching, this is like that. This is just an intention that Marnie has, like to be a mom, and we don't know what that looks like right now. And so yeah, it feels very special to articulate that out loud, and it felt like there was a big like release when you said that.
Another thing I saw was, so I always remember this, I've this music box. I mean, I don't know if I had a specific visual for it. I mean, I've always remembered like, that the box was wooden, it was round, there was an image of a baby on the box itself. Like it was like this white ceramic like plaque in the center. But as we were doing this, I remembered, and I'm talking like this is when I was an infant. It's not like this was in my room like as a child. So I'm just remembering this from that time. And I did have the EMDR, so I don't know if that has helped me with the memory in accessing that memory. But the baby on the ceramic piece is in the tree.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not sure so I don't know if it's like that I'm reclaiming, like I'm reclaiming the music box, because that's usually like that's something I do like with my inner child work, is to not just my inner child, but it's to, reclaim parts of myself or pieces or things that were scary, and and make them turn like a negative into a positive, like negative charge into a positive charge. So I thought, I don't know, there's got to be something to that, because I just all of a sudden I saw the exact artwork on the box, and the baby, and the baby's like in this like tree like bough, but then there's also like this rocker like within it. It's like the tree is like holding it.
Yes.
In the
I love that. Isn't that part of like the Rockabye Baby song? Like, Rockabye Baby on the treetops. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock, right? It's kind of a terrible ending. When the bell breaks, the cradle will fall and down will come baby. That's a terrible song.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's like such a classic lullaby. It just sort of ties into this theme of lullabies, and like, yeah, Rockabye Baby is like the ultimate, it's like, you know, number one like lullaby. So that's interesting that we are sort of installing Rockabye Baby in your energetic body.
It feels very, it feels like very strong, like the tree is like strong enough to, you know, to hold me.
The bough will not break, the cradle will not fall.
Right.
I love that. I love that. And you just said that at the beginning of this, that like you imagine your rocker being in the forest, like it's a rocker made of trees.
Right. So when I saw it, I was like, whoa, because I knew that there was an image, and I thought like, oh yeah, maybe it's of a baby, but you know, then I didn't see anything more than that. But then when I had my eyes closed again, I saw the image.
That's amazing. And it feels like that would be a very powerful image for you to have somewhere in your home. And it's such a classic image. I mean, I can imagine it on like a vintage, you know, print or something of like the baby and the little rocker that's like sitting in the tree, nestled in the tree limb. My gosh, I'm going to be on the lookout now for that kind of image, because it just feels like that's little baby Marnie rocking in the tree. That would be great to have. And then something else that is coming up, and then this feels like we're coming to a close, like there's nothing more to resolve or clear at this time, but something that is coming up is like a little like homework, like a lot of rose stuff is coming up, like the rose quartz, and then it feels like even more than that, just anything rose that you know want to be engaging with right now. Rose oil obviously is great, but not necessary. I mean, rose hydrosol, like rose water or something, or even just smelling roses if you have roses on the property, or you want to buy yourself some roses or something. But more than any of that, rose tea. So your grandmother is inviting you to have tea time. She would like to have rose tea with you. And not just, I have tea time with the grandmas, like plural. So it's apparently all of your ancestral grandmas want to have tea time with you. So, which seems like just a really sweet, like daily practice if you are inclined to gather everyone for tea and just like have a cup of some sort of rose tea, and maybe you could do some like non-dominant handwriting if you want to like ask them questions and see how they answer you. Non-dominant handwriting is when you write with your non-dominant hand, so you can just sort of ask a question to the universe or your, you know, inner self, or in this case, the grandmas, your ancestors, and then writing with your non-dominant hand, just seeing what answers flow for you, using that. And we use the non-dominant hand because it just accesses a different part of the brain, and it encourages your subconscious to step up. So yeah, if you want to bring them anything, talk to them about anything, doesn't even have to be writing necessarily. If you just kind of want to like, you know, let your mind wander and ask them questions and see what happens. If you want to kind of turn it into a meditation, like a visualization, and just kind of like see who shows up if you close your eyes and just invite all these women to come, like how do they show up and what do they want to tell you, and see what messages flow. But more than that, really, it doesn't have to be, I don't want you to feel like it has to be so, it doesn't have to be like an exercise. It really can just be like making a cup of tea and being like, hi grandmas, thanks for being here, love you, like whatever, just invite them to be part of your day. Yes, that tea with grandmas. Oh man, I want to have tea with my dead grandma. I'm gonna have to do that after this. Invite her to come have a cup of tea, see what she says. Is there anything else that's coming up for you, or do you have any questions or anything?
I usually have so many questions, or I have more to share with you, more imagery, but not really. I mean, the only other thing I think I wanted to share was that, well, two things. One is that I've been thinking about the fact that like that was the first room that I put together, and that just sort of like organically came together as I was searching for furniture, and and everything kind of just fit. It's this tiny little room, and everything kind of just fit just right in there. And then I was thinking, like, why am I not using this space? Like, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be using it for. And then there's been a couple of nights where my dog, Dempsey, is just like taking a right turn, like into that room, and kind of leading me into this other bedroom. So
love that. The animals know.
Right. So yeah. So I mean, yeah. No, I just feel like, I feel the like the end of this session. Like, I don't feel like there's.
Hi Dempsey, you want some Reiki?
He always stays.
That's so cute. Yeah, all right. Well, then I guess we'll just close with a little like hands over your heart and a deep breath to kind of integrate. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else that we need. Nope, just a few deep breaths and sighing it out. Thank you, Grandma B, for showing up, for hanging out, for being part of your healing and your growth and enlightenment. Nice to meet you. All right. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. Stop recording. Okay. After you stop, you will receive an email notification. Yes, please.